Wall Street posts a winning week with major indices gaining on Friday. The Dow Jones ended at a record high as the post-election rally continues in the US. The Treasury yields have slipped. Asian markets have opened largely higher, while the Nifty is indicating a 450-point gap up for our own markets this morning. Crude prices hold steady with Brent above $75 a barrel as the Ukraine war intensifies and the outlook on Chinese imports improves. Gold prices hit a two-week high above $2,700 an ounce on increased safe haven buying. The BJP-led ruling Mahayuti alliance sweeps Maharashtra, winning 230 out of 288 seats, while the Congress-led Mahavikas Aghadi wins only 46 seats in the assembly. The GMM-led coalition storms back to power in Jharkhand for its second straight term, winning 56 seats in an 81-member assembly. And the winter session of Parliament gets underway today. The Waqf Amendment Bill has been listed for consideration, while intense debates are expected over the opposition's demand for a probe into the allegations against the Adani Group. It's the start of a brand new week, the monthly expiry week for the Nifty, and what a start it promises to be. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18 in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Hormis Fatakia, but let's first take a look at how the Asian markets are doing, and it's not a bad start there as well. Most of the markets are trading in the green. The Nikkei is trading with gains of over 1.5%. The Taiwanese index is trading with gains of 1%. The Hang Seng is trading with gains of around 0.3%. The Shanghai Composite is in the green. The South Korean benchmarks too are trading with gains of 1.5%. So it's a positive green screen across the Asia Pacific, but the news of the morning is the gift Nifty, and that is indicating a gap up start, and it's not a 100-point gap up, it's not a 150-point gap up, but a 430-point gap up as we speak for our own markets, and that comes on the back of another 550 points that the Nifty had already moved higher on Friday. So it promises to be another gap up for our own markets at the start of the week, and almost 1,000-point move in 2 trading sessions. We'll keep an eye out on the start for our own markets. But the handover from Wall Street on Friday was a positive one as well, because the Dow hit a fresh record high. For the week, it was up 2%. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq both gained a similar quantum as well. And CNBC's Julia Burstein gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets were up across the major indexes Friday as Wall Street closed out a winning week, and the Dow hits a new all-time high. The Dow up 426 points, the S&P 500 up 21 points, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq up 31 points. Amazon on Friday announced it's investing an additional $4 billion in AI company Anthropic, which was founded by former research executives at rival OpenAI. It brings the tech giant's total investment to $8 billion. Amazon says its web services division will also become Anthropic's primary cloud and training partner. And the weekend box office is expected to be dominated by the Wicked musical film and Gladiator 2 in a blockbuster combo. Some analysts are comparing to last summer's Barbenheimer release of Barbie and Oppenheimer on the same weekend. Wicked is produced by CNBC's sister company, Universal Pictures. The films are expected to bring in about $200 million in combined ticket sales here in the U.S., according to box office analysts. Director John Chu's Wicked has already grossed $19.2 million in box office previews, while Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2 took in $6.5 million. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
Well, staying with Wall Street, let's hear into what the Goldman Sachs' U.S. equity strategist Ben Snyder and Phil Comperell of JP Morgan Asset Management have to say on the setup right now and the areas you should invest in.
I think, before the election, the outlook looked really solid. You had good earnings growth. We're forecasting 11% earnings growth for next year. You have a Fed that is in the progress of a cutting cycle. That's a good backdrop. And the real question is, how much has that changed post-election? If I look at what the market is telling us, it's incrementally more confident in the growth outlook. The extremely elevated degree of concentration in the market and relatively elevated valuation multiples compared to history. But if you pair that with a pretty good fundamental backdrop, as I was just discussing, there should still be very attractive pockets of the equity market for investors to look at. And for us, one interesting and overlooked pocket is mid-cap equities. You have this big group of stocks. They trade with very large market caps, very high profitability, and most investors have completely overlooked them. And the result of that is they trade almost exactly in line with their historical average valuation multiples.
Large cap is up 26% this year. Do you know if that was the exact number of last year? So we're not really leaning as much into U.S. large cap going forward, which is I think one of the best themes. I've never talked to you folks about mid cap, for example. I've never talked to you folks about an equal weight in the S&P, and I think that's what this market is calling for, particularly around the fundamentals. I mean, if you look at something like mid cap, the valuation is less than where a large cap is trading. You have really good earnings potential in mid cap. Don't need as much interest rate cuts. And at the end of the day, I think that's another big theme here.
That's all we have on the global market front, but how will all of these overnight cues impact our own markets? Not that they matter in a gap up like this, but we have our research team joining in with how the trade setup looks like and the stocks that are likely to be in the news. Firstly, Vivek joins in with all the market cues you need to watch out for. Vivek, good morning. A very strong gap up in the offing. What's the setup looking like now?
Well, good morning. Absolutely right. Nothing to complain as far as this Monday morning is concerned. Over 400 points gap up is what the GIFT Nifty is indicating. And like you mentioned, almost 1,000 points recovery as far as from the Thursday lows are concerned if this particular gap up sustains at 9:15 a.m. Now, just looking at, what the kind of handover received and how did the markets fare in the week gone by. Number one, all U.S. markets ended in the green. Now, despite the kind of volatility that we saw, when you're talking about the Indian markets, they too managed to end with some gains. Oil prices, however, in the week gone by, managed to go ahead and recover almost 5% from the recent lows. So oil prices on Friday, Brent actually gained 1.27% to end and hover around the $75 a barrel mark. Now, talking about, what is it that we'll be watching out for? Number one, remember, the reaction to the poll outcome to Maharashtra as well as Jharkhand, and this is something that's aiding the GIFT Nifty risk-on rally. Along with that, remember, today is an important day as far as passive indices are concerned. Today is the day in which you will see the MSCI adjustments actually take place in the session, 5 editions, and also the weight up as far as HDFC Bank is concerned. A little over $2 billion of inflows is what we will see into trade today. Now, also talking about the kind of handover received as far as Asian markets are concerned, very strong. Most of the Asian markets are up. No wonder then you're seeing and expecting a very strong gap up start to the markets today.
Is reflecting in how. Vivek, thanks a lot for that. Over to Vamakshi now, who would list out the stocks that you need to watch out for. Vamakshi, good morning. What's on your list?
Well, good morning, Hormaz. Let me first start off with the Rani group of companies, and that is because the petitioner in the Hindenburg case has filed a fresh plea in the Supreme Court, urging that malpractices are of serious nature and should be investigated by Indian agencies. And this application was filed on Saturday. In addition to that, keep an eye out on Adani Energy, and that is because the company has clarified that neither the company nor any of its units are involved in any airport project referred to in the media reports. They further clarify that contents of the Reuters media report with respect to any airport in Kenya do not pertain to the company as well as its subsidiaries. Zomato is another counter that we will be watching out for, because the board has, the shareholders have given a nod to the 8,500 crores fundraised via QIP. Aurobindo Pharma's arm has entered into a collaboration and licensing agreement with a global pharma major company for products across the respiratory therapeutic area. Alembic Pharma is another counter we will be watching out for. US FDA has issued a Form 483 with 5 procedural observations after an inspection at the company's solid oral formulation facility in Jarod. Bliss GVS Pharma manufacturing facility in Parghar has received a certificate of GMP compliance from National Agency for Medicines and Medical Devices of Romania. Escorts Kubota also on our radar, and that is because Escorts Kubota Finance Limited, which is the wholly owned subsidiary of the company, intends to commence its business activities of non-banking financial institution without accepting public deposits from November 26th onwards. Cochin Shipyard has entered into an MOU with Seatrum Litorno USA for the design and critical equipment for jackup rigs for the Indian market. Writes an order win worth almost 531.7 crores from Northeastern Front Railway. RVNL, an LOA has been received from Eastern Railway, and this project cost is almost 837 crores with RVNL share at almost 76%. And lastly, let's watch out for Jyoti Structures. Board has given its nod to fundraise up to 500 crores by way of rights issue.
Plenty of stocks to watch out for, Vamakshi. Thanks a lot for that. And lastly, Mangalam joins in with cues from the F&O space. Mangalam, good morning. What's the setup on the F&O side looking like now?
Well, extremely strong. On Friday, we saw a big move in the markets. So part of the street was anticipating, favorable election results. But to the extent of results that we got, that was something that was now reflected in the gift Nifty. So the big question that we ask post Maharashtra verdict and the way the markets have moved, is this the start of a new fresh bull run on the indices itself after a pause? That's the big question that we're asking. Why do we say that? Because on Friday, with the markets moving higher, the FII selling came down to around 1,250 odd crores on the cash basis, which is the lowest that we've seen since November 2024, November 1, 2024. And remember, November 1 was the Muhurat trading day. So if you adjust for that, it's actually the lowest that we've seen all the way since October 29th itself. The FI has bought about 3,000 crores in index futures, and for the first time in a long time, we saw some shorts cover their position. So 17,000 shorts covering their position and nearly 30,000 longs being added. And this has been a secular trend that we've seen over the last 4 trading sessions. The FII net contracts, which are close to 2.2 lakh on the obverse side, and long exposure, which was just 24% in 4 trading sessions itself, has now come down to 1.5 lakh, and it's 31% long exposure. If the market sustains the opening gap up and continues to move higher, then there is a fair amount of short covering possible because of the shorts in the system. There are still 69% positions by the FIs on the short side. And if you're talking about index futures, look at the bullishness that the FIs showed in stock futures. They bought about 12,000 crores in stock futures, added 1 lakh long contracts, covered 87,000 short contracts, and their long exposure there is 62 odd % itself. What should one do after this big gap up? Remember, the Nifty 24,000 calls saw a fair amount of short covering on Friday. Today, it could be the day for the 24,500 mark. We're opening close to 24,300, 24,350 thereabouts. After that, the 24,500 call, which has the maximum open interest, comes into play. On the way down, however, were we to see profit booking after this big gap up, the 20-day moving average, which is a little over 24,000, will now come into play as a strong support. On the way up beyond 24,500, we'll be looking at 24,780 to 24,705. But remember, just as on the way down, levels did not matter as much. We were breaking down through them. On the way up, if there is a powerful rally, then all these levels would be taken out as well. The question, once again, is it a start of a fresh bull run after a brief pause?
The bulls would certainly hope so, isn't it, Mangalam? Thanks a lot for that update. Time for a short break. On the other side, we'll get you updates on the state assembly elections from both Maharashtra and Jharkhand. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, sources tell CNBC TV 18 that the tax arbitration mechanism is on the cards. Timsy is joining us to tell us more. Timsy.
Are indicating to us that the government is currently considering mechanisms, including arbitration, to deal effectively with tax litigation. What we are given to understand from sources that the government may introduce an arbitration mechanism as an alternative to tax disputes in the upcoming budget for 2025. Currently, this proposal is under active discussions at various corridors of the government. Especially, the talks are on to create a special team dedicated to arbitration of tax disputes. Government is eyeing that the tax arbitration as a measure to improve ease of doing business in the country, and also once this arbitration mechanism is adopted, this measure will significantly reduce the burden of tax litigation backlog that is currently being faced by the Income Tax Department, to be precise. Apart from that, offering tax arbitration mechanism as an alternative will also help India match with the global best practices that its peers currently follow. Currently, countries like Canada, Australia already have tax arbitration mechanisms in place, and OECD is also advocating for arbitration as the preferred method for resolving tax disputes. So let's see whether Budget 2025 actually unveils an arbitration mechanism and a dedicated team so that these legacy and backlog tax disputes can be settled in a best way forward, something that we'll have to wait and watch for.
Timsy, thanks a lot for that update. Now, moving on to some more national news. The winter session of Parliament kicks off today, and a total of 16 significant bills are likely to be discussed. Now, the opposition has asked the centre to allow discussions in the Parliament on the bribery charges against the Adani Group. The violence in Manipur is also expected to feature in this session. Now, amendments to the Waqf Act and the banking laws will also be discussed. Now, reportedly, the floor leaders of the India bloc parties will hold a meeting at 10 a.m. at the Parliament House to finalize the opposition strategy before the session begins. The session will continue until the 20th of December. The more national updates, the ruling Mahayuti alliance swept Maharashtra, winning 230 out of the 288 assembly seats. The BJP not only recorded its best tally since 1990 with 132 seats, but also became the first party in the coalition era to emerge as the single largest party in every region of Maharashtra. Now, on the other hand, the Mahavikas Aghadi folded up with just 46 seats as the Congress lost 29 seats to register its worst performance in the state since 1962. Meanwhile, in Jharkhand, the Hemant Soren-led GMM solidified its position in the state. The alliance secured a comfortable majority, retaining Jharkhand as its stronghold. The JMM alliance won 56 seats in the 81-member assembly, while the BJP alliance had to be content with just 24. Now, in the by-polls, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra backed the parliamentarian seat in Wayanad over her CPI rival, while the Congress candidate Ravindra Chauhan emerged victorious in the Nanded by-election. And time for a short break now. Up next, we get you cues from the commodity space. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, the air quality index in the national capital has slightly improved from severe to poor last evening. Now, the Supreme Court has also said that it would consider easing the graded response action plan restrictions that were imposed in Delhi after the air quality index plunged last week. Now, revoking these measures could have an effect on whether schools and colleges will be reopened. Now, the Apex Court also expressed displeasure over the poor implementation of the GRAP4 restrictions, especially those related to the entry of trucks carrying non-essential goods into the capital. Now, bringing you some updates from the world of sports now. The first day of the two-day 2025 IPL mega auction in Jeddah of Saudi Arabia was action-packed as Rishabh Pant became the most expensive player in the history of the IPL after the wicketkeeper batsman was sold for 27 crore rupees to the Lucknow Super Giants. Now, Shreyas Iyer went to Punjab Kings for 26.75 crore rupees. Venkatesh Iyer was rebought by defending champions KKR for a whopping 23.75 crore rupees. Now, Indian bowlers also attracted a lot of attention as Yuzvendra Chahal and Arshdeep Singh were sold for 18 crore rupees each to the Punjab Kings, and a total of 72 players were sold on the first day, with 12 players going unsold. Let's take a look at how the Asian markets are faring as of now before we call time on this edition of Power Breakfast. It still continues to remain a strong day for the Asian indices as well. The Hang Seng is remaining around the flat line. The Taiwanese index too trading with gains of around 0.6%. The Japanese index is over 1% higher, as is the South Korean index. So a confident positive start for the Asian markets. And also pull up the GIFT Nifty. Let's see if there is any further up move from the start of the show that we had for our own markets as well. Remember, at the start of the show, it was a gap up of almost 430 points. As we speak, it's a 450 point gap up now for our own markets. So we keep an eye out for 9:15 and see how our own markets open up. For now, it promises to be a start deep in the green for our own markets. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Power Breakfast from me and the team that put this show together. Thank you so much for watching. Bazaar Morning Call sets you up for this gap up start.